Christmas to everybody. Happy holidays. I'm Arrington Thompson. Of course, this is Old School Guys talking old school music, and I have my good friend Larry Fulcher with me. Larry, how are you today?
I'm doing great today, Arrington. How you doing, man?
I am doing well, trying to get into the Christmas spirit. It seems like you're full on in the Christmas spirit. You just came back from buying Christmas lights.
Well, our house is going to be the gathering point this week. Well, for the next couple of weeks. My in-laws are coming into town, and we have this new grandbaby who is the center of everyone's attention. So, yeah, we're going to try and make a big deal out of it. So, yeah, I was out buying lights, and it's based on what day of the week it is, what planet I'm on, all that, you know.
How old's that grandbaby now?
He's 7 months old.
7 months old. Good. Well, I wanted to take this time to talk a little bit about a classic album because I think we need to, I want to talk about all kinds of old school music on this podcast. So I wanted to talk about the classic album Tommy by The Who. So when you hear that, what comes to your mind?
I flash back to hearing it for the first time in 1969. And how different it was from everything that was out there. I mean, it was the time of FM radio and stereo radio was new, so that whole sonic thing of listening to music and it coming at you from different directions. That was very cool. It was also the time when radio concentrated mainly on 2-minute 30-second, 2-minute 45-second tunes, and you were expected to drop 4 singles a year, one every 2 or 3 months.
Right.
Meanwhile, The Who came up with this thing that you had to. I mean, there was definitely some hits on it. Pinball Wizard, See Me, Feel Me, Touch Me. Those things were just great radio tunes, but the way that one thing led to another as a concept. And this was before Marvin Gaye's What's Going On did it so brilliantly, or before Stevie Wonder was doing it with his records. So it was new as a concept. It was new as sonically, and to be quite frankly, it was in a time of mind altering and mind expanding substances. So all of those little things, they mixed into the music. Like subtle sounds or concepts that led you to thinking about music as something other than the first 30 seconds of a love affair. It was a serious concept of this deaf, dumb, and blind kid whose life is traumatized by seeing his parents being murdered. And it was just a whole concept of it. You had to really sit and think about it. And then, subsequently, things like people like Pink Floyd and, those other people started doing concept records. But Tommy was the first one.
So that's the thing that I think is really interesting is that this story is not what you would expect as, if I was going to go up to somebody and say, hey, what kind of rock opera would you come up with? And you'd figure it'd be some sort of love story. But instead, this is this kid's traumatized. He draws within himself. They take him to a psychiatrist. That doesn't work out so good. He becomes them. It is a very involved tale, I guess I would say, story, and including talking about he gets drugs from somebody and has a hallucinogenic experience. That's in the song Underture. It's nearly mind-boggling all the stuff that he tries to cover in this that he brings to the table. Just very, very different than anything that I think, as you mentioned, anything that came before, and things that came after were not quite the same.
No, I mean, this kid also, it spoke about the public health care facilities. I mean, the kid was shuttled from here to there. He was released to his family members who sexually abused him and had him in bondage. This traumatized kid. So that was a lot for rock and roll at the time.
And one of the things that was, I guess, not standard, but one of the things that a lot of the artists were experimenting with was a different way to look at religion and spirituality. And some of that comes out in this, where Townshend was following kind of an Indian spiritual mentor. I think his name was, yes, Meher Baba.
Yeah.
And some of his teachings come into this, which, again, I think is extraordinary.
Yeah, and the Beatles kind of led people into thinking about Eastern philosophies. The music of Ravi Shankar. So yeah, looking toward the East for wisdom, for another form of spiritual belief other than Christian Judeo, was something different. And since everyone was into mind expansion at the time and seeking new forms of everything, it was very attractive to young people, to the whole hippie movement, counterculture movement, I'll call it.
So let's talk a little bit about Peter Townshend, who wrote most of the songs on this. I think there was only 2 songs he didn't write. So Peter Townshend was the lead guitar player for The Who, and as far as I understand, he learned how to play the piano a year before he wrote Tommy, and he wrote Tommy specifically on the piano. I just find that extraordinary. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, if you're going to write an opera, yeah, piano's a lot more expansive than a guitar, because it opens up what you can play. And it's also from a visual point of seeing the movement of keys and tonalities, if that makes sense. There's an endless variety of chords and of sequences and a history of people writing operas on the piano. So I think it's very cool that he did it.
I find it remarkable that a musician who basically spends most of his life, and you've done this too, where you spend most of your life doing X, then you decide, hey, I'm going to take this other instrument and I'm going to do Y. And it's like me deciding that all of a sudden I'm going to be an orthopedic surgeon. That's not happening. It's not happening.
I'm very lucky. I've worked as a keyboard player. I've worked as a guitar player and as a bass player. And it all it expands your concept of what you can bring to the table. It opens up the possibilities. I was reading another thing about Townshend years ago, and he listened to quite a lot of operas, to get the whole feeling and movement of music. One of his quotes was, I learned that if you go 16 steps up, you kind of eventually come 16 steps back down. You don't normally think of something like that in a pop tune. You're thinking, I need a hook, I need a chorus, I need a bridge, maybe throw in a solo, and then maybe another verse, and then you go out on the undertow or whatever, vamp. No, he was really composing as a classic composer does, thinking about every little thing, every little part, every transition. So it just showed how brilliant he was and how much he slowed himself down from the world of rock and roll to come up with that. To be able to conceptualize that and then talk the other guys in the band into doing it, because they weren't necessarily on the same wavelength as him. Roger Daltrey was a bar band guy, like to go out and play soccer and get in fights. Entwistle was great. Their bass player was a very schooled and trained musician. He does all the horns and just a lot of little things that you think of guitar, he's doing on bass. He was a brilliant musician. John Bonham was a force of nature. Not John Bonham. I'm saying
Keith Moon.
Keith Moon. I'm seeing Keith and saying Bonham. He was a force of nature and a great musician too. He wasn't just crazy. He played some brilliant stuff. And Townsend got the band to listen and use their energy and that whole rock force that they had and channeled it into these tunes, into different movements of these songs. It's, like I said, man, when you and I started talking about it, I went out and I bought the album. Oh, I downloaded it and didn't go buy it. But I sat up and listened to it from start to finish last night. And it was a brilliant piece of music. Still, 50 years later, still brilliant.
So let's talk a little bit about Pete Townshend and the times. So in 1969, it seems like if you're a rock band and a guitar player, your job was to have this barn-burning solo in nearly every song. But
Yes.
that doesn't seem to be that wasn't his M.O. How would you kind of describe his guitar playing?
He used the guitar to orchestrate. You had Hendrix, you had Clapton, you had Jimmy Page, Carlos Santana, all these brilliant soloists. But he used the guitar to orchestrate. He could do it in chord patterns. George Harrison was a similar kind of guy. Was not a great soloist, but as far as using the guitar to orchestrate, he was great at it. Well, Peter Townshend took that to just a whole nother extreme. As we were saying earlier, I don't think anyone can remember or quote in their minds a Peter Townshend solo, right? But everybody knows that rhythm of da-da, 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 that he does with chords on Pinball Wizard.
Right.
Keith Richards is another guy that's a great rhythm player. You know what I mean? He uses the guitar to orchestrate. But Townshend on Tommy just took it to a whole nother space, a whole nother level.
And I think that actually played into, again, because he could orchestrate, because he was able to see this whole thing come together, it made this really an extraordinary album. One of the things that I found that was really interesting is that he described the story to Rolling Stone before he actually had written everything down. There's this really long piece in Rolling Stone that you can still look at it today, where they are interviewing him, and later he says that kind of locked him into a story that he really wasn't comfortable with, which I thought was kind of fascinating.
Well, look, I know the story you're talking about, and it's up on my computer screen right now. It was one of the things I read last night. Just started doing a dive into it. It's true.
It's like you deciding you're going to write an album. I'm going to talk to Rolling Stone, tell them about what I'm going to write before I write it, and then go to the studio and go, wait, I'm not sure I want to write all that.
Well, that makes sense because you think one way one day, the next day you eat something different for breakfast, you think another way. That's real. I get it, but the result was the same. It's a brilliant, brilliant piece of music, and a great bit of sociology. Just in the story, in the path, the guy comes out of it a hero. People start worshiping him,
which I thought was another really kind of interesting twist of the whole song. In the whole opera is that the sad person who's getting abused and so forth really becomes almost a messiah figure.
Yeah, exactly. And you appreciate that in the Messiah, that he's had his ass kicked a few times so he can... he's telling you something, he knows what he's talking about.
So my other question to you is, how does this fit into, when I think of a rock opera, the one that I think of and the one that I really had memorized all the tunes for was Jesus Christ Superstar. And that came out, I think, a year later?
Yeah, it was at least a year later, maybe a couple of years later.
And how would you compare and contrast those two? Or would you? Would you just say they're two separate things and they each should stand on their own?
Well, since they're two different works, they have to stand on their own. But I think Tommy blazed the trail. Tommy proved that this could be done. You know what I mean? So someone else didn't have to reinvent the wheel when they did Jesus Christ Superstar. And you weren't limited just to 4 guys. They did it with 4 guys.
Right. Right.
Jesus Christ Superstar had a cast of hundreds. You know
Right.
what I mean? They did it with 4 guys. If they needed horns, Entwistle would play the French horn. You know, it's just brilliant. They might have called in a keyboard player. Maybe. Some synthesizer, somebody. I don't know for sure. I think it was just the 4 of them, though.
I think it was just the 4 of them. I don't remember saying anything where they called in somebody else.
Yeah.
They did call in some reinforcements for the movie.
Yeah.
And although they played a lot of the parts, Elton John and his band played Pinball Wizard. But it's just a remarkable piece of music. I will have all of that on our website. I will say that the Rolling Stone has labeled it one of the 100 greatest albums of all time, which is basically what you're saying, that still it stands up after 50 years.
Yeah, all the transitions still work. The things that were brilliant still are. You know what I mean? Whatever limitations as a lead guitar player as Peter Townsend had as a musician, he's heads and shoulders above a lot of people.
Absolutely, a great tune. The other things that I'd like to mention is that, you know, we'll label this series, I guess, albums that really changed the early 70s. And there are 2 other albums that we want to talk about, not today, but we'll talk about them later. We'll talk about Curtis Mayfield and his classic album, which, of course, the name is escaping me now, which includes
Superfly.
Superfly.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that. And we'll talk about Stevie Wonder's Intervisions, which basically catapulted Stevie Wonder from, I guess, the childhood genius to just regular genius.
Well, if we're going to do that, then we got to talk about What's Going On, because that was the one that Stevie used as leverage with Berry Gordy, that he could do it too. Look, Marvin did it. You hated what he was doing. You told him not to do it. You didn't support it at all. And that album is one of the probably top 10 albums of all time. Still.
Yes, we definitely have to talk about Marvin Gaye's What's Going On. That will be in the series also. Go ahead.
Yeah, and that laid the format for Stevie to go in and tell Barry, I'm going to do this. I'm not going to do anything else. I'm going to do this. It works.
He had incredible autonomy, and I guess Marvin Gaye had to fight for his autonomy.
Yeah.
Because so we'll talk more about that later. I want to wish you and your family and everybody out there a very Merry Christmas and Happy New Year and Happy Holidays to everybody.
Same to you and your family, man. Y'all be blessed. Get together and enjoy each other. Enjoy each other's company. This is fun,
isn't it? I really enjoy this, and hopefully we'll have some really cool guests in the near future to help us talk about old school music. We are old school guys talking old school music. I'm Arrington Thompson. He's Grammy Award-winning bassist Larry Fulcher, and happy holidays to everybody.
Yeah, God bless everybody. We'll see y'all again soon.